Okay, good morning. So we started on Monday the Maimer Pasach Ayo, the beginning of Vayera. The Alter Rebbe brought the pasuk that we say by Mincha, before Mincha Erev Shabbos Pasach Ayo. Ayo opened and said that Antu Chad v'lei b'chushban, that Hashem, you're one, but not in a numerical sense. Antu da'apikas eser tikunen, you made the Eser Tikunen, the Eser Sefirot. So we explained that in order to understand what the Eser Sefirot are, we have to first look into how we work, how the Mahus HaNefesh of a person works, and once we understand how we operate, we can understand how the Eibishter operates. So just like we said that a person has Mahus HaNefesh, that Nefesh is a simplistic light which has no division. And the seichel and the midas of the nefesh, that it helps the nefesh express itself, that you can have a shaychus in the nefesh. And the Alter Rebbe explained that the reason why we call tikunin, why do we call the Eser Sefirot in the lashon of tikunin, which the Alter Rebbe said it means like a ornament, a tachshit, jewelry, just like jewelry refines a person and adorns a person, brings out the beauty of a person, so too the kalim for the nefesh also bring out and let the nefesh express itself. Now we said that the kalim are not the seichel and midas of the nefesh are not the nefesh itself. They're one with the nefesh, and we brought a few examples that when the nefesh wants to do something, right away the kalim listen to it, and also if God forbid somebody stubs his foot and he's bleeding, so the nefesh feels it. So we see that the nefesh and the kalim are one. And then the Alter Rebbe said that the same thing with the Yud Sefirot, that the Eser Sefirot, what do? They bring out, they're able to, through the seichel and the midas of the Eser Sefirot, they are the kalim that the Orin Seif could express itself. Then we said that this is what it means, Antu Chad, Antu Chakim, that what does it mean, Hashem, you are wise? So he said that Ant refers to the level of Orin Seif, which goes into Chakim, which goes into Chachma, and it's the mucker of all the other sources of Chachma. Fine, so we're holding Hine HaInyan. It's page 26 over here, about that was on the bottom, the last, it's like 4 lines from the bottom on the left column. Okay, so he says, Kihine Yuvon al derech mashal. Well, understand this. Al derech mashal, Shomer Azal, the Gemara says, Ein lecha kol esav chuli. Says that there's not, that every blade of grass down in this world has a mazel milmaila, which is giving the grass, the blade of grass, a chayis. Ve gavoya me'al gavoya. And there's different levels, higher and higher levels in mazalis. He brings an example about a tapuach hagashmi, a physical apple, yeshua mesikus, has sweetness. Apple, a good apple, is very sweet. V'cheich oichol yitim. And the pasuk says that the palate of a person tastes the sweetness. Well, the question is, ha'im nemar sheyesh b'koyach hatzemeach asher ba'aretz tam u'mesikas gamkin? Are you going to say that in the actual koyach hatzemeach, in the actual power for ground to give vegetation and to grow, are you going to say that in the actual ground there is a flavor of sweetness? Upshita, the mazel she'ein me'erach u'muhozek klal. So it's obvious that what's giving the ground, the ground has the koyach to actually be matzmiach the tapuach. But you don't have in the ground, there's no like nutrients or substance in the actual ground that's going to give the apple a sweetness. So where's the sweetness coming from? Sweetness is coming from a mazel way up no mila. Ella, rather. So what's going on over here? Shamasikos, the sweetness in the apple, which comes from sweetness above, nimshach mechesed. It comes from the level of kindness. Umiridu and bitterness. When you have an onion, you have food that's bitter. Where does that come from? Gvura, from gvura. So these are all spiritual concepts. Rak should be ishtalshalus. The sedi yididus hamadreges. So what happens through sedi ishtalshalus and different myriads of levels going, descending down and down. Hamadreges madrega achamadrega. So through different sedi ishtalshalus, this gashmu, it becomes physical. Until the level of chesed is drawn down, which creates a mesikus. We're holding Yudalid. You see over there on the top? No, the next one, the third line. Okay. So what we're trying to bring out, we're trying to understand that we're saying that Chachma Batzilus, is the source for all the other Chachmas, is the source of Chachma of Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, etc. Now, he says that even though the Chachma of Atzilus is Be'ein Areich to the Chachma of Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, nevertheless, it's the source. What's an example that we can understand? So he says the example of an apple, the mesikus of an apple. So even though an apple, the source of its sweetness comes from a higher level, so l'chayra it's be'ein areich to the actual apple. Nevertheless, through sedi ishtalshalos and different madrigas, it can become, in a physical sense, enclosed in the apple, and it gives the apple a mesikus. Okay. Imeyos she'ena areich elav, even though that the mocker of chesed, which is the mocker, the mesikus, is be'ein areich to the apple. Nevertheless, it enclosed itself. And it pours itself inside the in the apple. We find that there are many different sweetness and pleasures, even in a spiritual sense. Doesn't mean bruchnius like real bruchnius, but he says when a person has pleasure in a dvar chachma, something like he gets excited from a good vort. A geschmack vort in Torah, so he has a timing from it. So hugamke mesikus. It's also pleasurable. And where does that come from? That comes from the chesed above. Somebody has a pleasure in a good song, which that comes from the voice in your heart. This in the emotional way. So through different different levels descending downwards, what comes out is that a mesikus gashmi is created. Now, the difference between a physical pleasure and in pleasure, there's many different levels. You can have a pleasure in food, you can have a pleasure in nigun, you can have a pleasure in dvar chachma. It's all pleasures, but there's a difference between the pleasures. And even in the highest level of pleasure that we understand, that comes from a higher pleasure comes from either chesed or gvura, but comes from the source above. So the Alter Rebbe explains, we're holding, those who just came, we're holding, the line starts with Daf Yudalid, Amar Aleph, it's the Torah Aleph, the first paragraph, the line starts with Rav. Okay. So same thing with Chachma. In Chachma, whatever Chachma we see has many levels of Chachma even higher than that. And even though the Chachma of Bria is be'ein areich to the essence of Chachma that we see in the Eilam Asiyah, nevertheless, nevertheless, that is the source of the Chachma of the lower level. So Chachma of Atzilus is the Chachma is the source of Chachma of Bria. Chachma of Bria is the source for Chachma of Yitzira, and Chachma of Yitzira is the source for Chachma of Bria. Asiya, yeah. Asiya. B'kachu Chachma d'Atzilus. So same thing with Chachma d'Atzilus. Even though we're saying at the level of Chachma d'Atzilus, it's a Chachma, but it's not a Chachma that we know about. It's the source of all sources. Since we're speaking about a level of Antu Chakim, which what does that mean? The Hainu Amshachas Erein Seif B'Chachma. Ant, we said, is going on the level of Or-Ein Seif. And the Or-Ein Seif is coming into the level of Chachma. So Hine, HaChachma, Mamish, this level of Chachma is Ma'ayin Timatza. Is Mamish coming from nothing, Yesh Ma'ayin. We're going to explain in a minute the difference between Seder Yishtalshlus. We can speak about this for hours, but in short, the difference between Seder Yishtalshlus and higher than Seder Yishtalshlus is Seder Yishtalshlus is all Ilu v'Olul, cause and effect. So Chachma to Gvura, Chachma to Bina, Bina to Das, and so on and so forth. It's all cause and effect. You're not making something Yesh Ma'ayin, something from nothing. Chachma v'Atzilus, in order for that to be created, Hashem had to make it Yesh Ma'ayin. It's not like, because basically, in short, you have Or-Ein Seif, which is the infinite light. So if it's infinite, there's no room for anything which is finite. So how do you bring finite into the world? So Hashem had to make Yesh Ma'ayin. Okay, so now the Alter Rebbe says, so this level of Chachma, the Antu Chakim, the level of Or-Ein Seif, which comes into the level of Chachma, that is Ma'ayin Timatza. Therefore, he bechinas an v'snusoi yisparich. This is a descent for Hashem. That for the level of Or-Ein Seif to come down into Chachma, it's a very great descent. This is what the word Atzilus means in Lashon HaKodesh. Shu Lashon Yedida v'Hashpala Madrigos Al Yedid LaHashpalas Atzmei Kihiluhu Madriga Pechusa. Atzilus means descending, coming down, lowering yourself. There's different, in Chiddush explains Atzilus. Why do we call Atzilus Atzilus? Either Meloshin Eitzel, because Atzilus is like next to Or-Ein Seif. As we say that the Atzilus and the Kalim are all one with Or-Ein Seif. Or Atzilus also comes from the Lashon of that it's like Lashon Kodesh, it's descending. It's going down from a higher madrega, from a higher level to a lower level. And he brings an example in Torah. He says, that I have to bring down the spirit. The Gabi Moshe in regards to Moshe. The Lafish, Omar Moshe Rabbeinu said when the Yidden were complaining and they wanted meat, so what did Moshe Rabbeinu say? Ma'ayin basar. Where can I get you meat? Moshe Rabbeinu said, I have no shaykhs to meat. Why? Moshe Rabbeinu was on a very high level. So Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe was on a very high level, he could not relate. Simply means Moshe Rabbeinu said, what do you want from me? Where can I get meat? So this explains it's a little deeper over here. What Moshe Rabbeinu is saying is that on my level, the way me Moshe Rabbeinu I have no shaykhs to gashmis. I have no shaykhs to meat. It's like Al Derech, the famous Sikha that we're gonna read soon by Pashas Yisro. So Yisro comes to Moshe Rabbeinu after he sees the way he's judging all the Yidden, and he's standing. He's basically a one-man band. He's alone. He's running the entire Klal Yisrael by himself. So Yisro, his father-in-law, comes to him and tells him, you can say that you can't. You're gonna wear yourself out. So what does Yisro tell him? You have to make groups, and you have to make divisions, and you have to have different levels, and etc. etc. So the question is, the Rebbe asks, what Moshe Rabbeinu didn't think about this before? Moshe Rabbeinu needs Yisro to tell him. So what's the verse? So the Rebbe explains that Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Yidden when they're next to him. When they're next to him on his level, he could bring the Yidden up, but not the Yidden or him will be weary, will be tired, will be drained, will be burnt out. So what do you say? Yeah, that's very nice. But what about when you're not here, Moshe Rabbeinu? What happens after 120? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "You're right." And he made different groups and different dayanim, and only the serious topics came to Moshe Rabbeinu. So so why am I saying this? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, mitzad himself, he said, "Ma'ayin li basar." Why? He's on a very high level. He could not bring down basar gashmi into the world. So therefore, Lakacham Lakadosh Baruch Hu. So what Hashem say? Es v'lishivim ish, gather for me 70 men. Shehem b'madrega pachuso, which are on a lower level than you, Moshe Rabbeinu. Hainu, shalayiyu mizgashmi mamish. Not that it became gashmis mamish elavat saltim naruach asher alecha, but rather you, Moshe Rabbeinu, have to like descend your level. You, Moshe Rabbeinu, have to descend, and this hamshach has to come through the zakenim. As it says, what does that mean? That you, Moshe Rabbeinu, should come down from your high level and take your powers, your level, and put it onto the zakenim, and through the zakenim, then the Yidden could have physical meat. And the samti aleim, what does it mean? You should place on them that the Yidden are going to be able to have a yinika, a nourishment and a tainug also for Moshe Rabbeinu. Not that the Yidden or the Zakenim are becoming to Moshe Rabbeinu's level. So what's the Alter Rebbe trying to bring out? He's saying that just like we find that Moshe Rabbeinu had to descend, had to go down a level to the Zakenim, and once he went down to the Zakenim's level, the Yidden were able to get meat. So, and not that, it doesn't mean that the Zakenim and the Yidden came at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. So we can understand the same thing in regards to the level of Atzilus. So it's a descent for Orein Soif to come down and enclose itself in Chachma. Therefore, Nikra Esesviris Atzilus Esetikun. Therefore, we call the level, the Esesviris, we call it, the Esesviris of Atzilus, we call it the 10 ornaments, the 10 pieces of jewelry. Why? Because they are the garments and the ornaments and the jewelry for Orein Soif. However, they're not the essence of Orein Soif. Nevertheless, so the Ezer spheres, they're not garments, because garments, we said in last year, we said that garments you can take off easily. Garments, if somebody takes a scissor or a knife and rips the garment, you don't feel it. Mashenkin, the tikkunin of the Ezer spheres, that's not the atzmius of the Ezer spheres, but it is a lot more with Ezer spheres than a regular garment. Because in the level of Atzilus, the Orein Soif and the Kalim of Atzilus are one. However, in Bi'ah it's not. Okay, we're holding the second paragraph, Daf Yudal. And this is what it means, that you are one, but not in a sense of a numerical sense, which means that Orein Soif is not listed, not counted, part of the Ezer spheres. It says in the brackets, V'koi al Keser Elyon. This refers to the level of the supernal Keser, which Keser is higher than, Keser means a crown. So just think about it as a person. A person is comprised of Ezer spheres. We have 3 intellectual attributes, which is Chesed, Chochmah, Bin, and Das. And then you have the emotions of a person. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, Malchus. Now, then you have on top of, just like you have a crown goes on top of a person's head, so too, the level of Keser by Ezer spheres is higher than, say, the Hishtalshelus, but has a shaykhis to say the Hishtalshelus. So the Alter Rebbe is saying that the level of Keser Elyon is a memutza, is like intermediary between Hamatzil and Etzalim, between the emanator and the emanations, which means in simple English that Keser is the intermediary, which is how does Orein Soif come down into Chochmah? How does it have a shaykhis? That's to the level of Keser Elyon. So when we're saying Antu Chad, that you are one, which means that the level of Orein Soif is not part of Seder Yishtalshelus. The level of Keser Elyon, which is the Mamutz bin Amatzal and Etzalim, is not part of Seder Yishtalshelus. Why? She says Shein Areicha Lov Klal, that Orein Soif has no erech whatsoever to Chachma. Because when Chachma is created from the level of Keser, Elyon, he ma'ayin mamish. This is mamish from something from nothing, which is in Lashon Chassidus yesh ma'ayin. V'lo say the Yishtalshalos, and this is not in a way of say the Yishtalshalos she'im b'chinas his avish yesh miyesh, which we know, like we explained before, that say the Yishtalshalos comes from Ilul v'Alo, comes from cause and effect. Behold, in all the levels, on all the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiya, Yesh B'chinas Keser HaMamutza. Every level, in order to get from one level to the next level, you need to have this level of Keser, which is the intermediary between one level and the next level. Malchus to Atzilus, because the level of Malchus, of Atzilus, Nasa Keser the Bria becomes Keser for Bria. In order for Bria to be in existence, in order for Malchus of Malchus, we know in the Sefirot, Malchus is a less than Megar Klum. So Malchus is a Makabel, but it also creates the next level. What level does it create? So let's say, the Alter Rebbe's example is Malchus of Atzilus creates Bria. How is Bria created? From Malchus of Atzilus. So that is from the level of Keser. And he says, Malchus de Bria Keser Yitzir. And Malchus of Bria makes Keser of Yitzir. Now, what's the difference between them? What's the difference between Keser of Atzilus and the Keser of all the rest of the worlds? In order for Atzilus to be created, in order for Orin Seif to create Atzilus, that had to come through a great symptom, a great contraction of the Orin Seif. The Yois Mokim Poni B'chol Mamish. In short, again, this is a discussion which, many places in Chassidus, what I could think of is in the Rebbe Rashab Samach Vav Maimer. I believe the first Maimer explains this by Arichos. But in short, the world was full of Orin Seif. Was full of Orin Seif means the light which is infinite. Hashem has to create a world which is finite. If something is unlimited, is infinite, how could finite be created? So there's an issue, there's a problem. So what did Hashem do? Hashem took the Orin Seif and he Kiviyachol removed the Orin Seif. He was Mesalik, he removed the Orin Seif away. So now you have an empty space. What did Hashem do? With say the Yishtalshalos, with a Kav, and with the Rishimu, what did he do? He brought back the Orin Seif into the world, which that's like the Shviras HaKelim, the difference between Tayu and Tikkun. In order for the level of Orin Seif to have a Shaykhis to Atzilus, that had to be done through Yesh Ma'ayin. Why? Because the world is full of Orin Seif. So again, inside. And the creation of Bria, Yitzir Asiya, Hainu. This is through the parsa which separates between Atzilus and Bria. So, in short, the difference between the creation of Atzilus and the creation of the other worlds is the creation of Atzilus that came from Yesh Ma'ayin. The creation of Bria, Yitzir Asiya, that came from the level of Parsa. Now, what's the difference between Mokim Panei v'Cholol, and Parsa? He says, what's the difference between a Parsa and a Mokim Panei? We'll understand this by explaining the idea of being mitzamtzum Orin Seif. Hine Orin Seif, this level of Orin Seif, Hainu. Oir v'giloi, is ezis bashtus v'savas mokar v'chayis, Orin Seif Shabbat's Musa, Hainu. Chinazu, she'ish by earliest, meir mispashatis, l'lachis. So what's Orin Seif? Orin Seif is the light of Atzmos. It's the light of the essence of Hashem. This is what it means. That before the world was created, it says that before the world was created, him and his name were alone. What does that mean? That I know who Orin Seif, who means Orin Seif. Ushmai, what is the name? Who Orin Seif Shabbat's Musa, which is the light of Atzmos. So, who refers to Atzmos? Shmai refers to the light of the Atzmos. which is only the level of a name. That the only shaykhs that we have to Atzmus of Hashem is the level of Or Ein Sof. So he gives an example. Just like the ray of the sun, Hashemesh Haziv Hu Or Sheyesh B'Shemesh L'Hor Al Haaretz. Hashemesh Atzmei Dehainu Guf. Hashemesh Atzmei V'Hine Ha'Or Yisem Hashemesh Nikra B'Shem Or. K'meshikasav Yigra L'Kim L'Or Yom Shayim Nikra Al Shem Yispashis Or V'Aziv. Hashemer V'Yem Hashekin Atzmei Hashemesh Nikra Mor. It's very simple. You have the Shemesh, you have the light, the source of the light, and you have the light. So the source of the light is called Mor, and the ray that comes out is called Ziv. So Or Ein Sof is not, you're not getting the essence of Hashem. It's not it's just like the sun. You're not getting the essence of the sun. So too, the Or Ein Sof, which comes out of Atzmis, is only a ray of Atzmis. It's not Atzmis Mamish. As it says, that the two luminaries, the sun and the moon, they are the Mor. They are the source of either light or darkness. So too the Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof, that's called the light, which brings a revelation and a chayis into this world. And the Ein Sof itself, which is the level of the source of the light, which is the source of Or, and that is where the Or is created from. Okay, so we'll stop over here.
What's the connection to Eretz Yisrael? Why did he do this whole introduction to get to?
So we